It seems like it's every little girl's dream to grow up, become a princess, and live happily ever after. Kristine Johnson grew up with so much ambition. Everyone knew she would do something big. One day her name would be in lights. They just didn't know that the reason she would be remembered is because of a monster with a very sinister plan. This is her story.
On the 15th of February 2003, this footage of a seemingly normal shopping trip was recorded in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, this footage marked the beginning of a very sinister story. The woman in the black hat is 21-year-old Kristine Johnson. Just hours after leaving the mall, Kristine disappeared without a trace. Except there was. The items she bought at the mall that day played a crucial role in uncovering the mystery of her disappearance. What happened to Kristine? Join us as we uncover the heartbreaking case of Kristine Johnson. On the 20th of February 2003, 5 days after Kristine's disappearance, a woman called the police station. She read about Kristine in a paper and came forward with information she thought would be useful to aid the investigation. She informed the investigators about a man who had approached her at the same mall a few weeks earlier. He claimed to be involved in the production of the upcoming James Bond movie and asked her to audition. She recalled that he insisted she come along with a white shirt, a miniskirt, nylons, and stiletto heels. Coincidentally, Kristine had purchased exactly those items the day she went missing. The case had taken an ugly turn, and it only got worse from that point. Detectives began gathering similar accounts from other women who had encountered the same serial predator prowling Hollywood for over a decade. But it would take the disappearance of a young woman named Kristine Johnson to open an investigation that would bring this predator to justice. Kristine's story begins in the year 2001. Kristine was 20 years old at the time and had just left the small town of Saugatuck, Michigan, and relocated to Southern California. She aimed to complete her education while pursuing her dream of making it in Hollywood. When her efforts in the film industry proved challenging, she began to consider returning home. She even progressed to the point of contacting U-Haul, ready to move back to Los Angeles. However, she ultimately decided to persist in pursuing her Hollywood aspirations. Kristine continued her determined efforts in Los Angeles, securing a job as a production assistant for a new movie. However, her struggles in the industry persisted, causing her to take a job at a cell phone company while never giving up on her dreams. Fast forward to Saturday, February 15, 2003. Kristine conversed with her mother, Terry, over the phone and shared her plans to visit the mall that day. Her mother encouraged her to get something as a Valentine's gift for herself. After saying their goodbyes, Kristine set out for the mall. This was the last time Terry spoke to her daughter. By February 17, Terry, who is accustomed to daily conversations with her daughter, grew concerned when 48 hours passed without contact from Kristine. Repeated calls to her cell phone went unanswered. Kristine was also absent from work, and this further alarmed her parents. Fearing something may have happened to her, they reported her missing to the police. A lot of time had already gone by, so the police promptly initiated a search. Kristine's family traveled to Los Angeles and immediately took action to raise awareness of Kristine's disappearance by distributing